Chapter 3. As I tore down the dirt path, my survival instincts briefed me on everything I needed to know. I needed to find a leafy bush with purple. There! I snatched a handful of leaves and purple berries as I sprinted past, knowing that their crushed scent could hinder an Ascali's senses. I rubbed the bitterly potent juice on my arms as maps flashed through my mind, telling me the distance between Tabriel Vale and the Dragona. I had a chance of making it back to the Dragona as long as nothing caught up to me first. I caught a glimpse of something running to my left, but the blur was so fast it was able to spring through the air and knock me to the ground before I could even react. My momentum hurtled me into the base of a tree while the Ascali rolled back onto his feet, crouching to growl at me. My right knee took most of the impact in a sickening crunch, causing more than enough pain to curl up and cry over. Despite my certainty that it was broken, I only lay still for a few seconds of shock before I grabbed the tree beside me and pulled myself back up. My instincts screamed to not appear cowardly, even if my eyes watered and I had to put all my weight on my left leg to stay up. The Ascali kept his stance and assessed everything about me as I shot a stare back at him, holding his gaze. His bared teeth, the wide angles of his face, and the set of his eyes all made him seem wolf-like. His green irises were clouded with undefined pupils, and the staff he carried on his back gleamed with blades on both ends. The spikes of bone jutting from his elbows alarmed me more than the conventional weapon. All my limbs shook violently, filled with adrenaline for which I had no direction. What options did I have? "This one is fast," an Ascali woman said as she caught up and abruptly stopped. She had the same alarming look about her, as though mostly person yet part monster, but the protruding bones from her forearms rested against her upper arms since she held her hands loosely at her sides. Every time she switched her attention to something new, whether it was my injury or the other Ascali, her movements were quick and her gaze intensive.
"She shouldn't have been running,"
he growled, crouching over the stump in front of him to distribute some of his weight to his hands. I got the impression he was comfortable on all fours and possibly about to spring. The cloudy-eyed woman replied, "She's done running. Let's take her before those mages get here." The male Ascali pulled out his bladed staff, and I cringed against the massive tree, aware that I had nothing I could grab to prevent them from dragging me off. "Do you not speak?" He took a step closer, head cocked to the side. "Say something." My inner mind pounded on my awareness, demanding that I match their aggression with my own pride. "I'm not afraid of you," I snarled, surprising with how convincing my lie sounded. "What do you want?" The Ascali's eyes narrowed as he found my question humorous, and he put the blade of his staff to my throat.
"You have a lot to atone for. We're taking you back to Decaron."
The brown-flecked falcon swooped down and landed on the staff, inquisitively watching me. "Atone for," I repeated, trying to keep my voice from trembling. What did I do? I angered him by asking, and he said,
"Your stupid questions aren't fooling anyone. You were the tally we were told to pursue."
The woman crouched defensively, and with her eyes on the trees behind me, she hissed,
"Their mages are almost here."
When the male froze to listen as well, I thrust the blade away from my neck, grabbed the falcon, and dashed back from his irate response. He bared his teeth and leapt toward me.
"What are you doing?"
He only stopped because I was ready to break the falcon's neck.
"I swear to you, girl, if you kill my bird, you'll follow it straight into oblivion."
The falcon shrieked and flailed, trying to free itself, but I kept my grip on it through the talons and snapping beak. My knees still bellowed with agony, begging me to sit down, but I shoved the pain from my mind. The woman said,
"We need to go, now. We'll send someone else out for her later." "Not if she's dead," he growled back. "You know we can't kill her," the woman replied. Not this one. Nobody said I had to bring her back with both her arms,
he said, but I heard another tiny voice whisper to me.
Tuck.
The voice was a woman's, but nobody else was near me. Get on the ground, now! I had no idea who was instructing me, but I dropped the falcon and flung myself down as a wave of fire slammed into the two Ascalis. I could hear the footsteps of a half-dozen mages who guarded the woods. Gravity pushed me into the dirt harder than ever before, and I saw the same pressure hindering the Ascalis as vines sprang up to entangle them. Both attempted to remain on their feet, and I used a strange combination of rolling and crawling to get myself away from the snarling predators. Is that Allie? One of the women asked as the pressure lessened, and I got painfully to my knees. It figures she's the one in trouble again, another man answered, his arms stretched toward the Ascalis, with an orange glow in his hands. I didn't even look back to see what magic they used to combat the monsters now. As soon as I had my feet beneath me, I took off. I favored one leg over the other, resulting in a weird skipping run. But it was enough to get me away from the danger. I could still hear shouting behind me as I stopped to lean against a tree, pulling my knee in close. Gripping it tightly with both hands kept the pain at bay and gave me a chance to catch my breath. I looked back just in time to see the entire sky dim as two black lightning bolts struck near the conflict. A crack of thunder rumbled through me, rattling needles free from the branches overhead, and I ran again. I was almost to the Dragona, so I ignored the pain in my knee and picked up as much speed as I could. I came out to a grassy clearing near the base of a massive, snow-capped mountain, but I saw no buildings. The Dragona had been right here on the map in my mind. I was sure of it. Yet I couldn't find any evidence of life in the empty field. Had I been horribly wrong? I didn't want to retreat to the mages to ask, and I stuck a fist in my mouth to keep from whimpering, wishing with my entire being to just be home and safe. Ellie! A guy who looked my age shouted, running toward me. Paranoia had me on the verge of fleeing again, but he was clearly human and knew my name. What's going on? We heard something about your memory, but it's a joke, right? You do know who I am. Taller than me, he had messy brown hair and handsome dark eyes I couldn't remember seeing before. And though it was entirely irrational, I flung my arms up and grabbed his shoulders with a grip that could crush rocks. Who are you, and how do you know about my memory? I had to be suspicious of everyone. There was a chance he could read my mind, after all. His eyes were wide with disbelief, and only a hand's breadth away from my face. I'm West. I'm one of your friends, Allie. This crazy troop of bakers just came stampeding through the Dragona, saying they'd found you. They said something about your memory, but that they lost you again. I responded with a choked mix between a laugh and a sob, picturing the bakers flailing their arms and exclaiming they had lost me. I glanced around again and let go of him. Where's the Dragona? You are at the Dragona. I gestured frantically to the empty evening. Then what? It's invisible? No, he replied. It's underground in the caves. This really is bad, isn't it? Do you even remember who Liz is? I know she's my sister, I said. I quickly squashed the hope in his eyes as I added, but only because I found a scrap of paper that said so. West, can you tell me who I am? What was I doing that made me lose my memory? Why are the Ascalis targeting me? He had to process the shock of everything I said before replying. I don't think the Ascalis are after you specifically, Allie. They just like to hunt people in general. They just told me I have something to atone for. They were trying to take me alive. What? West said. Allie, Ascalis can't speak our language. These ones could. Wes must have run out of logical reasoning for me, because he said, "We need to get you to Anna. Come on. One of the Dragona's entrances is hidden in the rocks over here." My knee still hurt, but I was already able to hide my hobble as I followed West. I must have seriously overreacted to the injury, thinking it was broken. It definitely wasn't. "Who's Anna?" I asked as we climbed over a mossy jumble of stones to enter the concealed tunnel system.
"Anna and Sir Darius are the Dragona's leaders,"
West replied.
"Anna's a fire mage, and I know she's probably the more dangerous of the two, but she'll be the better one to talk to. Trust me."
I wouldn't be following him through an underground maze if I hadn't placed some sort of trust in him. The rock walls of the tunnel were rough and jagged, while the floors had been smoothed by years of foot traffic. And I followed West blindly as the sight of the Ascalis flashed across my mind. As terrifying as they were, the mages were just as dangerous. I was lucky they were on my side and not suspicious of me. When the cave forked, we took a right, and then we headed left as it split into two more tunnels. Wes and I approached the wooden door of Anna's study, and it opened before we had a chance to knock. When we entered a small room, which smelled like the aged pages of a book, I needed a second to absorb the peculiar appearance of the woman who let us in. Taller than me, and with bright green eyes, she retreated behind a desk littered with scrolls and leather-bound tomes. I didn't need an intact memory to know staring wasn't polite, but still. Red as a hair color? It was an abnormality that distracted me from launching immediately into my saga. Anna raised her eyebrows and said, "You should probably stop staring at the red hair, Allie, and tell me what's going on." I only felt a tinge of embarrassment as she called me out, but my cheeks flushed as I bore the shame of a coward. I swallowed and said, "Where do I start? I just woke up in Tabriel Vale, and I literally know nothing. I was chased down by these two Ascalis on my way back here. They were specifically after me, saying I had something to atone for." Anna remained composed, but the squint of her eyes gave away her concern.
"I told her they can't speak our language,"
West said.
"Maybe that's Allie's power? She can understand other languages?"
"Some Ascalis can speak our language," Anna said. "They train a select few to do it, and it's no coincidence that those are the ones who found you and let you live. That never happens. It's possible they were trying to plant false information with you. Did they give you a message? Or seemingly let something slip?" "No," I said. "I don't think they did." Think. Think of any way they tried to mislead you." I wrung my hands as I tried to recall their words. "I don't know. They were calling me a tally and saying I was in trouble. They were going to take me somewhere. I don't remember the name of it, but they could have dragged me off if the mages hadn't come." Anna nodded solemnly. They are good at carrying people off. A quick knock preceded a frazzled woman bursting into the room, declaring, "I've got a minor emergency with the Eclipsable set up." Anna folded her arms and tipped her head to the side before she replied, "I'm in the middle of one that is much more important right now, so I suggest you either solve it, find Sir Darius, or wait until I'm through here." The woman glanced around at the three of us, backed out of the room again, and softly closed the door. I wasn't sure which element of the situation convinced me I liked Anna, but I knew that I did. Her theory also made sense in every way except the lack of any message from the Ascalis. They hadn't told me anything except that somebody would come after me later. "Allie," she said, moving past the interruption, "do you have any idea what happened to your memory?" "None," I replied. I proceeded to tell her about coming to my senses in the woods and meeting the traveling baking show, but she agreed through the unease on her face that none of it was useful information. I ended by asking, why was I in Tabrio Vale? You shouldn't have been, she said. Nobody's supposed to leave the Dragona without permission, but that's never been a rule you've followed. This isn't the first time our mages have saved you from Ascallies in the woods, and word has already reached me that your attackers got away, so we won't know what they wanted. They got away? I repeated, unable to believe it. But the mages were incredible. And the Ascallies are incredibly resilient, Anna replied. Knock them down, and they'll get right back up to bite you. They were going to send more after me, I told her. They said they would. What should I do? As long as you are in the Dragona, you need not to worry, Anna said. We keep the Ascallies fooled into thinking this is the mountain of wild dragons, so they won't know to look for you here. We also patrol the woods often in case one strays this way. I asked, how can you be sure, but was interrupted when the door suddenly flung open again. I only had a fraction of a second to see the running girl, with dark hair and brown eyes on a face about 5 years younger than mine, before she barreled into me, almost knocking me over. And that is the end of Chapter 3.